Is up? Welcome into this Week 14 recap edition of Pushing the Pile, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. I'm joined by Leger Douzable. Leger, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. You know, it's championship weekend in college football. A lot of good games today on the tube as well. It's probably more blowouts than we're accustomed to seeing this week in the NFL season. But I mean, great game that just finished, though, that went down to a wire between the Bills and the Rams. I know we'll get into that.
Yeah, we could talk all day about the college football playoff and all that went down yesterday, over the weekend. And like you said, there weren't too many great games on the docket today, but there was one, and it does have some pretty big playoff implications. So in our 6 points that we do every single Sunday, we're going to start off with the first point. The Rams at home upset the Bills, one of the games of the season, 44-42. Josh Allen, 6 touchdowns on the day, 3 passing, 3 rushing. If you're trying to get into your fantasy playoffs and you had Josh Allen, congratulations. I think you made it. Matt Stafford, 23 of 30, 320 yards, 2 touchdowns. They had a blocked punt in that game for a touchdown. A lot of awesome plays to get into. Where do you want to start with this one, though, Jay?
I go back and forth, right? Because when you look at it, right, both of these teams, well, the Bills are already in the playoffs, right? They already won the AFC East crown. But the Rams are still fighting tooth and nail to not only win the division, but to get into the playoffs, right? They're on the outside looking in right now. And honestly, Mike, if I'm the rest of the NFC, I don't want the Rams in the playoffs because of Sean McVay. Honestly, when you talk about the play design that he puts like defenses in such a bind and blender in regards to, you know, having great eye discipline, because if you don't, plays are out the gate. And then the way that Matt Stafford threw the leather off the pigskin today, like they're a dangerous team. I think people tend to forget what this team did last year with Cooper Kupp being hurt most of the year with just Puka Nacua. And I think people forgot Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp were both hurt in the beginning of this year. And that's why they struggled, along with the offensive line issues because of injuries up front as well. Now everybody's getting healthy at the right time. Now there's still some woes on defense, and when you look at their defense, again, this has been their issue, I would say, going back the last 2 years. Not a lot of name guys, right? There's not like a lot of frontline star power, but they're a unit that plays well together. This is a young defensive front that is going to be good for the next 3 to 4 years together. They're both either in their first or second year on this team, right? Some young guys in the secondary. They did get Williams back, who was there before Darius Williams. He's played really well for them on the outside. But they still have some young corners on the outside as well. And then Lake is a guy that can play kind of like nickel, safety, dime linebacker for them as well. He kind of does everything on defense for them. So, again, not a lot of name guys, but they just make just enough plays to keep them in games. And when your offense is that explosive, you just got to stop the other team every once in a while, and you have a chance to win games. I mean, again, you've seen Matt Stafford and what he's done the last 4 games since he's got both of his receivers back. Like, it's been night and day in regards to touchdowns to interceptions. He's really taking care of the football. And the old Grizzly vet is even getting out on the edge on some bootlegs and throwing the ball down the field as well. So, like, if I'm the rest of the NFC, like, this is the one team I don't want to sneak into the playoffs, because with that offensive line getting healthy, with the receivers that they have in Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, and the way that Matt Stafford is playing football right now, they're a very dangerous team.
I think that's the thing that not a lot of people are talking about, is that their offensive line is finally healthy. It was such a disaster early on. I remember watching the Green Bay game early in the season, just being like, I don't know what the Rams could even do offensively. Like, I don't know what Matt Stafford could have done differently. They just were so overmatched in so many games that you almost forget, like, yeah, they were a 6-6 team heading into this, but they really weren't. Like, this is a team that's so far better than that, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And they haven't even gotten Tyler Higbee back. He should be back here coming soon. He was practicing this week, didn't play in this one, I believe, but should be back. And that's another weapon to add to the fold, that if they can sneak in to this NFC West, and we'll get to them in just a second, the standings and how we see that division playing out. But yeah, they're a scary football team. But out from the Bills' perspective, you're 10-3, right? Like, you had aspirations to get that 1 seed. You just needed to tie the Chiefs to get that 1 seed. But now if the Chiefs win this, there's not a great chance of the Chiefs losing 2 games down the stretch. Now, it is difficult down the stretch, but they're obviously one of the best teams in football. They have after this, the Chargers, obviously tonight. They got Browns, Texans, Steelers, Broncos. So very well could. But there's a situation where the Bills might be getting like 3 weeks of rest here at the end. They don't necessarily need to subject Josh Allen to all the hits he was taking because he was basically putting that offense on his back. They can really ice this offense if they want to down the stretch here because they're kind of locked into that 2 or 3, and it really doesn't necessarily matter which one with the way the wild card's going here in the AFC. So I'm interested to see your thoughts on if we're sitting here 2 weeks from now and say the Chiefs haven't lost a game, Bills are still 2 games back. Do we start to give guys rest, start to sub guys out and let them be healthy down the stretch, or do we go full bore for that 1 seed still?
I don't think you think about that until at least week 17, right? I think no matter what, the starters are going to play all the way through week 17. Now, again, if they're locked into the number 2 seed in week 18, you're playing New England. There's probably no need to put Josh Allen, Deion Dawkins, a lot of your frontline guys out there. But, Mike, this team has a real issue on defense. I don't think enough people are talking about it. When you look at their games, and even in some of their wins, like let's go back to when they played the New York Jets after the firing of Robert Saleh. Like, Breece Hall had his way with that defense, right? And that game came down to the last second. Go back to the Miami game when they were up and let Tua Tagovailoa put 2 or 3 straight drives together at the end to tie the game up. And if not for Bass making a heroic, I believe 61-yarder it was, like that game goes into overtime. And this is probably be an unpopular opinion, but right now it seems like the Bills are front runners when you look at them, right? Because when you look at how they've played throughout this year, in games they've been down, they've lost, right? The only game they didn't do that was week 1 versus Arizona. That was the only game. Every other game they've been down, they've lost. The Texans, the Ravens, and now the Rams. Now, I don't blame Josh Allen and his offense. I do blame him in the Ravens and the Texans game because they were awful in that game. But how this offense has gelled the last few weeks, and even today, they put up 42 points and lost the game. Like Josh Allen, you talked about it, Mike. He put the team on his back, literally, whether it was throwing the ball in a slot fade to Mac Hollins, which was perfect placement, whether it's on 3rd and long, taking off with his mobility and picking up pivotal first downs, outrunning linebackers and getting first downs, being gritty on the sideline. Like he did it all, finding Khalil Shakir, just spotting up in zone, getting him the ball quick. That way Shakir can get north and south and score a 40-plus yard touchdown. Like Josh Allen did literally everything he could. The only mistake he made was not scoring that touchdown on the sneak, which forced him to use a timeout, which forced him to kick an onside kick. That was the only mistake Josh Allen made all day today. Other than that, he was perfect. This would have been a perfect MVP performance to catapult him kind of like to the top. Now, I think Vegas odds still have him at the top. Going into this week, I had Saquon at the top. But after this performance, I feel like I have to put Josh Allen on top of Saquon in regards to best odds to win the MVP. Now, I don't know if the Eagles win that game without Saquon because I know we'll maybe talk about this later, but that game came down to the wire, and a lot of people didn't expect it either, the Eagles versus the Carolina Panthers. But Josh Allen literally put this team on his back. His defense let him down today.
Yeah, it really was a MVP type performance. Even if like heading up into now, you said he was number 1 MVP odds. It was more of like a career MVP where it's like, hey, he needs one at some point. Let's give it to him this year. He's playing well enough, carrying him to wins. But this was an MVP, Josh Allen. That was him offensively. Yeah. But I agree, this defense has talent deficiency. It's flat out. It's something we've been saying kind of all year, but they've obviously played above it. But in a number of games, the wheels have fallen off, and that's worrisome because that's their MO come playoff time, right? Is that just the defense after being stout all year? And they were a top 10 defense this year already heading into this game in terms of points per game. But then all of a sudden, it seems like for whatever reason, they just can't stop a nosebleed. And this one was it just felt like an early playoff game for the Buffalo Bills. This felt like how a lot of Josh Allen playoff losses have gone, unfortunately.
And the way this sets up, and I'm glad, Debo put this up for us right now, the standings in the AFC. Say Baltimore falls to the 7th seed and they get Buffalo, in Buffalo. Like that run game travels. That travels in any weather, right? And they have had issue with the physical downhill run game. Now, they played a lot better in the second half versus it, but Kyron Williams had his way with them in the first half, him and Blake Corum. Whatever they wanted, they got up front, right? And that's worrisome because, again, when you have a physical run game, whether you're the Denver, you can even put the Denver Broncos, you can put the LA Chargers in that category, you can put the Baltimore Ravens. Like, yes, it's like 17 degrees in Buffalo, but the run game travels like
Yep.
I said this on X last week. I said if Christian McCaffrey didn't get hurt, he's running for 200 yards this game. The man had 53 yards in the first quarter. Like, they couldn't stop him. So, like, if he never got hurt, he was running for 200 yards. And that's a real concern if you're the Buffalo Bills, because anytime they've had issues, it's been a downhill run game. And when you're able to run like that, we know what that opens up, right, Mike? The play-action pass game. And that's why Matt Stafford had so much success on bootlegs and play-action pass tonight, because Kyron Williams and Blake Corum had their way with them running the football. So that's a real concern. I know Matt Milano is still trying to work his way in, and you would think hopefully the next couple of weeks he'll be back to his old self, but you just never know when you're coming off 2 major injuries in a row if you're ever going to revert back to who you were. So that's a real concern. Like, if Buffalo gets down in games, Josh Allen can do all he wants, but it doesn't matter. And this is the issue that Joe Burrow is having right now, right, in Cincinnati. You can do all you want on offense, but if the other side of the ball can't stop a nosebleed, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, we do have to give some credit, though. I want to give a shout out to Sean McVay. The call he made, 4th and 5, just under 4 minutes remaining. They had a 50-yard field goal that would have put him up 6. He goes for it. If they don't get it there, I think he takes a lot of flack for that decision not to kick. They obviously convert. Then on the 3rd down, they see cover 0, check to the screen. The rest is history. Touchdown to Puka Nacua. But those are plays and decisions that we could be looking at right now, or a lot of people could be looking at criticizing, saying the Rams just cost themselves a chance at winning the West with that decision. But I look at it the complete opposite way, that if you kick the field goal there, Josh Allen was coming back down scoring. There's no doubt in my mind he was going to, had to go for it. Had to.
Yeah, I tweeted it right away. I said, I don't mind this by Sean McVay, because, and this is the thing, people get so trapped in like analytics and all this stuff. Like, analytics is there to help you win the game. Like, it's always pointing towards you winning the game, right?
Yes.
But when you play football, you know there's an ebbs and flow to the game. Like, you feel where momentum is shifting in that game. And Sean McVay knew, like, if I kick this field goal, whether we make it or not, the way Josh Allen is playing right now, I don't trust our defense can stop him. And sure enough, he drove the ball down the next drive and scored a touchdown. So it ultimately was the right decision by Sean McVay to go for it on 4th down. And great job by the offensive line protecting, because Stafford went through like 2 or 3 progressions before he found Tutu Atwell coming across in the middle. And a great touch on the ball to put that right in between his numbers to get that 1st down. And you talked about it, them checking to the screen, right? That short motion is a mug on defense. You get that short motion, it really can disguise or undisguise what the defense is doing. It lets you know what they're doing. They check to the screen, and great job by Cooper Kupp blocking to spring Puka Nacua for a touchdown. Sean McVay, to me right now, is the top play caller in all of football. I don't even think it's close.
Yes, dialing it up real nice. And I like how you put it, the analytics there. Analytics and the decisions, they give you the odds to win the game, whereas a lot of coaches, I think, make decisions to keep it close, to put points on the scoreboard, not necessarily to ultimately be the victors when it comes out at the end. All right, we're going to take a quick break. After it's going to get to the NFC West. A lot of hoopla in that 4 p.m. hour about the NFC West. We're going to break down how we see this division playing out going forward right after this.
Welcome to JJ's.
I'll have wait, there's no way I can get a burger?
No chance. But you can have the NFL on CBS streams live on Paramount Plus. Oh, hang on. There's a toy.
All right. Rams beat the Bills 44-42. Seahawks beat the Cards 30-18. Massive win for them. Winners of 4 straight. They sit atop the division at 8-5. Cardinals now at 6-7. And then the 49ers blew out the Bears, one of the most lopsided games you'll see all season long, 38-13. But they round up the rear still of the NFC West at 6-7. Still a lot of intra-divisional games here going forward, as a lot of these teams still play each other. But as it stands right now, you see there on your screen, Seattle at 8-5, Rams at 7-6, Cardinals at 6-7, 49ers at 6-7. I think we ask this question every single week, but who do we think comes out on top at the end of this division?
I know me and Mike have been high on the Seattle Seahawks since the beginning of the year.
The defense.
Right? Now, I had in the beginning, I had in the beginning of the year San Fran just because of the pedigree and the frontline players, but they've had a lot of injuries and then some off-the-field stuff, unfortunately, with some of their star players that has kept them away from the field, and I think that's what has hurt them. And they still have a gauntlet of a schedule coming down. But the Seattle Seahawks have to be kicking themselves because there was a game earlier this year versus the Rams where they essentially gave that game away. Right now, this week is big because the Rams play San Fran on Thursday night. And to me, whoever loses that game essentially is probably going to knock themselves out of the playoffs altogether. Like the loser of that game will be out of the playoffs. Seattle is one of the hottest teams coming off the bye, right? When you look at Mike Macdonald, I think people were worried some in the beginning because he essentially was brought in to fix the defense. Now, Pete Carroll is a defensive-minded coach, but the defense had been the issue for the Seahawks the last few years. Right. Mike Macdonald made some, I would say, head-scratching moves, right? When you cut Terrell Dotson, who you just paid in the offseason, right? You trade for Ernest Jones, and this is the second time being traded for within like 6 weeks. But they've worked, right? They've been amazing pickups. Like Ernest Jones balled out today, right? He had an interception today. So, like, he's been really good at that linebacking position for Mike Macdonald. Leonard Williams has been almost unblockable for the last month of the season. Right. And then they got Uchenna Nwosu back as well this year. So they're getting stronger on that side of the ball. Me and you talked about it. Geno Smith, nobody makes more big time throws than him, but he had struggled in the beginning of the year in the red zone and turning the football over. That was something that I feel like he's finally kind of got out of his system the last 3 games. He's been doing a really good job of taking care of the football, and he's still throwing the leather off. I mean, some of the throws he made today, like even like some of the drops, like the Tyler Lockett drop for the touchdown, which would have extended the lead by, I think, 2 scores. Like, I don't see many guys making that throw. Like, he put it where only Tyler Lockett could catch it.
Yeah.
And Tyler Lockett of old would have caught that. Like, it hit him right in the hands. So, I mean, you have to give a shout out to Zach Charbonnet, who stepped in for Kenneth Walker III. And this running offense had struggled. But for some reason, I don't know if it's Zach Charbonnet's run style. The offensive line were moving people from the Cardinals today. Like, they were literally displacing guys. And Charbonnet was breaking tackles and running with purpose. He had a career day today, so he was big. And you talked about the defense already. I mean, those 2 early turnovers of Kyler Murray. One, Kyler Murray was staring the receiver down, didn't even see Ernest Jones in zone coverage. He picks it off, and on the next one, he was late to the outside. Kobe Bryant does a really good job undercutting it and getting an interception. So I love what I've seen from the Seattle defense. And they're another team. I know I talked about the Rams, and nobody wants them to get in. Seattle gets a home playoff game and potentially, gets 2 home playoff games. They're gonna be tough to contend with. Like that's a well-balanced breakfast over there.
Because unlike the Cardinals, whose like defense had played really well, the Seahawks have talent on that side of the football. Like this is no
heavy frontline talent.
Yes, this is no fluke, and not only on the defensive line, but now at linebacker with Ernest Jones, but then also in the secondary with Tariq Woolen and Devin Witherspoon. Like this is a real deal. Julian Love as well. And I
don't forget Julian Love
at the end of that game, up 2 scores. Kyler Murray walking kind of down the football field. They still don't allow a touchdown there at the end. They had some pride, a few pass breakups in the end zone. Those guys are still fighting to the end. And it's indicative of just how well coached they look right now. I mean, just not giving you a lot of options for big plays, not blowing a lot of coverages, just a tough defense to face down in and down out. And then the flip side, we talked about the Rams and their offensive line getting healthy. Seattle's offensive line, since the retirement of Connor Williams and the return of Abraham Lucas, has actually turned around. I mean, like they have been much better in recent weeks. And that's like a big part of Geno's turnover issues is he's not having to throw with 3 guys hanging off him anymore. He's not having to throw from these collapsing tiny pockets. And that just makes such a huge difference. And when he gets time, he is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So, yeah, I'm scared.
Without a doubt.
If I'm the rest of the NFC West, I think it's Seattle. I think at this point, you're going to have to unseat the king. They got a difficult schedule, though.
I was about to say, that schedule is tough. It's really tough. Hey, Debo, you can put that up for us one more time? Because I didn't realize that they had not only Green Bay, but they got Minnesota, and they finish off with the Rams, too. So, 3 of those 4 are going to be I would say they have to win at least 2 to win the division.
I think it's that Rams game at the end. That will be the de facto division championship game. And I think
good thing is they got Green Bay and Minnesota at home.
Yes. And Chicago's in free fall right now. I think you can chalk up Chicago as a win. If they can sneak out one of Green Bay or Minnesota, because the Rams have the 49ers, the Jets, the Cardinals, and then obviously that Week 18 Seahawks game. So an easier schedule of it, but they're that game back. And I think the 49ers right now going to them on Thursday night is going to be a difficult win for them. So we shall see who ends up
for sure.
That.
I mean, the only thing is the Rams do got one game up on them, right? So like you have to, if the schedules end up being or the record ends up being the same, like that, like you said, that Week 18 matchup at LA is going to be for all the marbles.
All right, let's get to the only other division really that's kind of still up for grabs. I guess you could say the NFC North is up for grabs with the way the Vikings are playing, but the one that's still hotly contested, but maybe not trending that way, the Bucs and the Falcons going in completely opposite directions. Bucs blow out the Raiders 28-13, while the Vikings blow out the Falcons 42-21. Is this one just over? I mean, at this point, I think the Falcons look like the worst team in the NFC South. I know they had the best record going into this week, but I would take the Saints and the Panthers right now. If we're playing at neutral fields, those two teams look better the way they played the past few weeks.
I don't even think you need to go to the neutral field the way both the Saints and the Panthers took the Eagles to the wire at the link today, right? When you look at it, and I was one that was very adamant last week saying that Raheem Morris has to take a look in the mirror, and he also has to know the temperament of his team, because the Kirk co-change that we've seen for the last 4 weeks has not been the guy that we saw in Minnesota. Right now, there was speculation that Kirk maybe wasn't healthy because for some odd reason, Zach Robinson kept having him in pistol. We all know Kirk Cousins is one of the best play-action passers in the league. And to do that effectively, you got to be under center, right? There has to be a real threat of run. Now, when you saw that first drive, Mike, I was like, oh, he's back. Yeah. He's going back to Minnesota. He's going to show them that you should have paid me. I mean, again, under center, Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, zone game, working to a T, play-action pass, hitting Mooney across the middle. Like, it was there. It looked good the first drive, and then it just went away. Like it was just like a magic trick. Again, I don't know if that was because it was the first 15 scripted, but after that, it just did not look good. Kirk Cousins' first interception was just utterly ridiculous. Quarterbacks know when they usually pump fake and they feel like something isn't there, you usually go with your first mind, right? You don't want to continue to still throw the ball after you realize I shouldn't throw this ball. Well, he literally stared down Josh Metellus, pump faked it because he's like, I shouldn't throw it, and then threw it anyway. And it got picked. Like, it obviously is getting picked off. Like, and then later on, an overthrow, Byron Murphy with a heck of a one-handed catch. And I think Ray McCloud's fumble was big, because it seemed like the Falcons were starting to catch some momentum, and then Ray McCloud fumbles it. And then, Sam Darnold on that offense, you're only going to keep them down for so long. I thought the Atlanta Falcons defense played really good in the first half. People have been talking about their pass rush. It's come alive the last few weeks. Right, we saw Arnold Ebiketie get in the backfield. Yeah, we saw Eddie Goldman get a sack as well. So they were harassing Sam Darnold. You also got to give some respect to him because he made some plays with his mobility on platform, getting out of the pocket. That touchdown pass to Justin Jefferson. I mean, they sent all-out blitz, and he made about 3 guys miss, and Justin Jefferson was wide open, and he found him in the back for a touchdown. So if I'm the Atlanta Falcons, I'm gonna say this one more time: like, you had a 3-game lead in this division. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have just walked you down, right? They've literally, since the bye, have not lost. And it's been the opposite. You haven't won. So if you're Raheem Morris, again, you have to know the temperature of your team. And if they start to get some whispers in there and saying, man, we've seen this young kid spin it in practice, he's able to actually move and evade some rush, maybe we give him a shot because we're still in this thing, right? Because we have the tiebreaker over the Bucs. We beat them twice already, right? And that was the last time we actually saw Kirk play like Kirk Cousins. So it'll be an interesting week for the Atlanta Falcons. I know a lot of people that live in Atlanta. I know a lot of people that work in sports radio in Atlanta, and the rumor mill has been going in regards to giving Michael Penix Jr. a chance. Like, you took him in the top 10 for this exact reason, in case Kirk Cousins wasn't 100% healthy, right? And he was going to be the guy of the future. So, again, Raheem Morris, this is going to be a big week for him.
I was going back and forth for a while on the Penix conversation, and I hate putting that kind of pressure on a rookie. But we are at the point in the season where now it's not really pressure because you're not in first place anymore. It's not pressure to hold on to a lead. It's just you're playing with house money. If you don't make the playoffs, you weren't making the playoffs anyways with Kirk Cousins, and you got a long week here. You got Monday Night Football is your next game, and it's against the Raiders. It's not like you're going into what we just went through. And in Kirk Cousins' defense, he had to face the Broncos, the Chargers, the Vikings the past 3 weeks. But it gave you the sort of litmus test to know that those are 3 defenses you're going to have to beat come playoff time. And there is no way in hell that they're beating any of those defenses come playoff time. They're just not. So even if you do sneak in, because you got an easy schedule coming in here, you got Raiders, Giants, Commanders, Panthers. So it's semi-easy schedule. You should be favored in 3 of those games.
That Commanders and Panthers game is going to be tough.
But yeah, maybe not the way the Panthers are playing at this point. So favored at least 2 of those. So it's semi-easy. Yeah. Like you should be able to right this ship in some way, shape, or form. But you got a very good idea of how your team looks and stacks up against real deal playoff teams. And it is not even close, is what I saw the past 3 weeks, unfortunately, for Falcons fans. So then at that point, you are playing with house money if you put in Michael Penix. He doesn't have any pressure, and all he can do is play the same level as Kirk or worse. And it's like, well, you weren't making the playoffs with Kirk, unfortunately. So, yeah, I think I'm at the point where I'd be willing to do it. He's played a ton of football. Michael Penix isn't, a 3-year – this isn't Mitch Trubisky coming out after 1 year of college. The guy was 6 years in college, 5 years as a starter, ton of football under his belt, one of the most pass-heavy offenses in college football last year, played in the playoff. Like, there's no reason that this guy couldn't at this point rise to the occasion if he's the guy. Yeah. So I think it's time.
Yeah, again, especially with the way the offensive line is blocked as of late in regards to the run game. So, like, he'll be able to lean on that run game, right? And Michael Penix has been known to carve people up down the field and down the seams, right? And that would be perfect for this Zach Robinson offense. So, again, this is a big week. Maybe to the point that you made, because the schedule is light, maybe they do stick it out with Kirk because they're like, to your point, like we played the Denver Broncos, right? We played the Minnesota Vikings. These are 2 of the top defenses. We played the Chargers. These are like 3 of the top like 5 or 6 defenses in all football. But that's why you brought Kirk Cochains in, to beat those teams. Like, so like you're saying, you're playing with house money. You took a guy number 8 overall. You might as well see what he is, because like you said, you're not in first place anymore. You've allowed the Tampa Bay Bucs to walk you down, right? At worst, you're not going to make the playoffs, and you get to see what Michael Penix is like under center.
Yep. All right, let's get to our 4th point here. Got to give the Vikings their due. We're going to talk about which team in each conference would you not want to play as a wild card team? Which wild card team are you most afraid of if they're coming to your place come January? I'll let you start.
Whew. I mean, that Minnesota team is going to be tough to contend with. Now, it'll be interesting to see them play in like inclement weather, because they haven't had to really do that yet, because they played Detroit in Detroit. And when they played Green Bay, it was earlier in the year, so it was nice, right? So, like, you got to think, who would they potentially get matched up in if they're the number 5 seed, right? Would it be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which, if that's the case, then that's great, right? It's going to be great weather for you, right? You don't have to worry about it playing in Tampa Bay. So that, I think the Minnesota Vikings right now is one team I wouldn't want to have to face off with for sure. I'm trying to think who else could be a wild card. Like Commanders, like they're a team that's, there's still a lot of question marks there, right? They started off really good, then had a little bit of a lull, got back on track last week. We'll see how they look coming out of the bye as well. I talked about the Rams. They're not currently in, but that's another team that I would probably not want to face. I'm not as high on your Green Bay Packers, though, to be honest with you, just because.
Not after Thursday night?
Again, no, I'm not, right? I'm not, right? When you look at that game, they allowed, and again, this is respect to the guys that are there, but they allow guys that literally just got to the Detroit to literally, like, create havoc in the first quarter. Like, literally create havoc in the first quarter. Like, they were down early in that game because of Aaron Glenn and his coaching, right? And shout out to that coaching staff, because we talk about this all the time, Mike. Like, you got to have some Jimmies and Joes, right? You can have all the schematics you want, but you got to have guys, like, to win games. And they're playing with a lot of guys that literally just got to Detroit. And yet, like, in that first quarter, they created havoc. Now, we saw the issues of having guys that just got to Detroit in the second half when teams make adjustments, right? They could stop a nosebleed in the second half, right? But if you're Green Bay, like, you know that you had to keep pace with Minnesota and Detroit. Like, there's no way, if I'm Jordan Love and the weapons that I have at my disposal, that I'm letting this defense stop me, right? Because we saw the Chicago Bears carve them up the week before in the second half as well. Like, y'all not stopping me because we got too much firepower out here. right? And of course, there was a suspect offensive, pass interference call that may have derailed the comeback for them. But to me, if you're Green Bay, like they were in that scenario last year when they went into Detroit and Thanksgiving, and that's how they played. That's the team I was expecting, Mike, and I didn't see that in the first half for Green Bay. Now, I saw it in the second half, but, at that point, it was too late, right? But I would have liked to see them. So the jury, to me, is still out on Green Bay. Love the physicality that Josh Jacobs brings to that offense. I think that's a different dynamic than they had last year. Aaron Jones is a hell of a player, but I just think Josh Jacobs brings a different mindset to that team. And if we see Jordan Love that we saw the second half, I feel comfortable with that. But he's just been too inconsistent this year for me. But to me, it's Minnesota without a doubt. That's the one team I do not want to see as a wild card team.
Yeah, I was very hesitant to buy into Sam Darnold, truthfully. It just for obvious reasons, right? Like we've been fooled before. And there were games early on this season where he threw some disastrous interceptions and just had some terrible decisions and kind of went in the tank. But man, his last 4 games since that Jacksonville game, that was kind of like, ew, what was that? This last kind of week 10. The last 4 games since then has been lights out. I mean, the guy has been slinging it down the football field, big plays. And what I love is that he understands who he has. He has 2 stud wide receivers, and he gives them chances to make plays whenever possible. I hate when quarterbacks are hesitant to throw when he has one-on-ones down the football field, when he has like high-end number 1 guys, and when the guy just won't pull the trigger. And that's not the case with Sam Darnold. He is consistently giving them chances almost to a fault. He's going to feed his best players, even when sometimes, they are bad opportunities. But that's a recipe for success, I think, especially when you have the talent that they do at wide receiver and when you have a guy like Kevin O'Connell scheming it up, because every single week they come with a game plan that just is able to attack whatever your weaknesses are. And it's obviously helpful when you got the talent that he does around him. So I'm all in. I'm all in on Darnold. I think he's
I love that.
I think I think he can play a game in the playoffs that like could actually go out and win you a game, right? Is what I was worried. I thought he'd be more likely to lose you one. I think he could go out and win you one now, actually, in the playoffs.
Yeah, to that point, right? I remember us talking about that Jaguars game where I think he threw like 4 picks and he was force feeding it to Justin Jefferson to a fault, right? Like, and me and you both talked about this, and I was like, I think KOC, when I say KOC, Kevin O'Connell, forgot that he has a first-round receiver on the other side, and Jordan Addison. And it was since that game that Sam Darnold has essentially been using Justin Jefferson as a decoy, and Jordan Addison's been going off, and TJ Hawkinson have been going off. And Justin Jefferson is still getting his, but he wasn't getting it to the number he was getting it in the first half of the season. And I think that's smart, right? Like, I think JJ understands, yes, I could go out and put out prolific numbers, but if we lose games, then it doesn't matter, right? I need these 2 other guys so we can make a deep playoff run. And Jordan Addison today was unstoppable. Like 3 touchdowns, you see it on the screen, 3 touchdowns, over 125 yards. But a lot of that was also KOC's scheme-wise, right? We talked about the short motion earlier with Sean McVay and Puka Nacua. They did the same thing in the red zone, and when you look at what the Falcons thought, they thought they were going to banjo it and pass it off. Jordan Addison ends up being wide open in the flat because Justin Jefferson is the guy that he stacks, right? That's what JJ brings to the offense. He can be a decoy because he is so special. So I really love that Sam Darnold has grown. And yes, you do have Justin Jefferson. And if the game's on the line, I do need to go to him like he did in the Cardinals game when they came back and won that game. But I also can lean on Jordan Addison. I also can lean on TJ Hawkinson. And I think that's the growth we've seen the last 4 weeks where I'm like you, Mike. I believe Sam Darnold can go out there and win you games. Matter of fact, he's done it. He did it in the Chicago game versus the Bears. He did it versus the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, this game was tight until the third quarter, and then Sam Darnold just took off with his receivers. So 5 touchdown passes today, right? 3 to Addison, 2 to Justin Jefferson. So we talked about his mobility and his ability to make guys miss. I don't think his mobility is talked about enough. It's like one of those underlying factors in this game which can make him a really good player at the quarterback position in regards to getting out of pressure and throwing the ball down the field. We saw that today on that Justin Jefferson touchdown. So I'm with you. I'm all aboard the Sam Darnold train. Like, again, that's a team I wouldn't want to play in the playoffs. Now, I would love to see them play in some inclement weather just so I can feel comfortable, right? Mm-hmm. But if they go to Detroit, I mean, if they go to Philly, that's going to be an issue because it's going to be cold there. But, like, if they end up playing a Tampa Bay Bucs, they're going to be fine because that's great weather, right? So I love what I've seen from Sam Darnold.
Yeah, Darnold has the kind of mobility that you want in a quarterback. I feel like there's a lot of athletes at quarterback who aren't evasive, who like when the pocket gets tight, they don't know where to find exits. Darnold, he can shimmy. He's got that aspect to his game, which is so valuable when the pocket is collapsing. When you do need to create outside of structure, he has that, even if he's not like a guy that I would ever want running the football out in space, right? It's just a different kind of athleticism. All right, our next point, our fifth point. We had to do it, but we have to talk about
why.
The New York Jets.
Why we had to do this, Mike? Why did we have to do this?
Because they officially got eliminated from playoff football today. 14 straight seasons. Finally, yeah. And their 32-26 loss in overtime to the Miami Dolphins. But a streak did get broken today. Aaron Rodgers had his first 300-yard passing game in 3 years, since week 14, 2021. So we got to give a round of applause to A-Rod. Can't wait to watch the documentary coming out. But I wanted to ask you, obviously the season now being over, what is an ideal offseason look like for this Jets franchise?
Yeah, that's a tough question, Mark, right? Because it's so funny, right? Like you bring up the 300-yard streak that ended in him getting over 300. I think it was first time since like 2021 or something like that.
Yeah, week 14, literally 3 years.
Yeah, it's been like 3 years, right? So the Jets can't even win when Aaron Rodgers has a great game. Like that's crazy to me. And the way that this game played out, just awful and situational football scenarios for the Jets. But I digress. When you talk about the offseason, right, first and foremost, you got to get the right GM in place. The right GM and head coach have to be a perfect marriage. They got to be in step. Now, again, GMs and head coaches are not going to always agree, but there also needs to be a layer of respect there where both guys can move forward amicably after a decision has been made. Right, they need to be on the same page. So, a couple of names I threw out there. I think Ray Agnew makes a lot of sense. He's with the Detroit. I believe he's in the front office with the Detroit Lions. You saw what Brad Holmes has done over there. I think Aaron Glenn, and again, a guy that's in Detroit, where Ray Agnew is, makes a lot of sense. Also, Aaron Glenn, it would mean something to him because he was a draft pick by the Jets. He loves the Jets, right? So, you're getting a guy that wants to turn it around, that cares about the organization. Right. So to me, you have to get the right GM, obviously, and the right coach in place. And then next, they got to get the right signal caller. Right. And to me, I think you have to move on with it from Aaron Rodgers. And this is no disrespect to Aaron Rodgers, but it's just I think in regards to Rodgers, I don't know if he would love to be in a scenario where the Jets take somebody in the first round and then say the same thing happens this year. I don't know if Aaron Rodgers would be comfortable going to the bench, where the Jets may need to bring in that rookie to get him some reps, to get him, coming along and developing. Would Rodgers be okay with that? Right? I don't know. Also, if a new GM comes in, he might not let Rodgers have any say-so on anything. Right? Are you going to be okay with that? I mean, the last time Rodgers really didn't have any say-so was in Green Bay, and it worked out pretty well there. Right? So, I remember Brian Gutekunst, coming out saying, hey, don't make it tough for LaFleur. He said it multiple times to him, hey, don't make it tough for LaFleur. So the Jets have to get a quarterback of the future. And I think that's been the issue with them. They have not been able to secure that. And that's why my franchise has struggled for the last 14 years. If you don't have the right signal caller, we know in this league, it's almost impossible to win games. Now, you can skate by if you have an elite defense, you have a really good special teams, and you don't beat yourself. Right, you may be skate by for a year, but you're not going to have longevity if you don't get the right signal caller. So they have to get the right signal caller, and then they have to get somebody in to change the losing culture. It's bad. The last time we won, Mike, I was there in 2015. Just to put it in perspective, that was the last winning season my Jets have had. When I was there, when I was wearing that helmet right there, that was the last winning season that my Jets have had. So you got to change the culture for sure. Right, got to get the right GM, head coach. And they got to get the right signal caller. Even if he doesn't even play his first year, they have to get the right signal caller.
I wonder what they're going to do at quarterback, because they're not the only ones, and they're not in a position to be drafting one. Unfortunately, we've discussed this draft class that there's probably two. If you want to go beyond the top two in Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, you're going to be scraping the bottom.
The rest of those guys got to sit. The rest,
and they may not even come out is the other thing. The guys who are maybe intriguing, developmental, Garrett Nussmeier,
Drew Aller.
or Drew Aller. It's like they may return. Quinn Ewers, who's not even intriguing.
I think Quinn Ewers has no chance. He either has to go to the draft or transfer. He might not even start the playoff game, to be honest.
Yeah, they probably shouldn't at this point, the way he looked. But there's just you're scraping the bottom of the barrel. I do wonder if they go. What was that? Jessica to re-sign Darnold. That's what I was going to say.
There's been some rumors. Him and Geno supposedly could potentially be on the market.
If you're taking someone from Detroit and Aaron Glenn, would you go Detroit's route and take a failed quarterback somewhere else? Not necessarily failed, but like, would you go trade for someone? Is that because that's your only real other option, unless you want to go Darnold, unless you want to go Jameis, unless you want to really make a play at Russell Wilson. Those don't excite me, though. I mean, Darnold at this point.
Justin Fields.
Do those excite you? I mean, like, do these feel like quarterbacks?
I mean, I would, if they could possibly just get in the top two, which I know that kind of sucks to say. That means they would literally have to lose out, because right now I believe it's the Raiders and the Giants are 1 and 2, if I'm not mistaken. And after seeing what the Giants did today, I don't see them winning another game. And the Raiders too. Now that Desmond Ritter's at quarterback, I don't see them winning another game either. So like, and there's no way the Raiders are giving up that number 1 spot, because they get their pick of Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, right? Mm-hmm. I think they have to give Antonio Pierce another year, because they haven't got the quarterback position right for him yet. You can't. We just talked about this, Mike. You can't win if you don't have the right signal caller.
Yep. And
he's at least kept his teams competitive with having inadequate quarterback play. So it'll be interesting to see what the Jets do, because if you're stuck at the number 3 spot, right? There's, like we talked about, there's 2 guys. There's literally 2 guys. Like, you're not taking, a Jackson Dart or or Drew Aller or Quinn Ewers. You're not taking them 3 overall. That's just not going to happen.
No way.
And I don't know if there'll be many teams willing to trade back anyway, right? I mean, there could be a team that wants to trade for Travis Hunter, but my thing is, if you're at 3, you might as well take him at 3, right? Because I think he's that transcendent of a player. It just sucks because you don't answer your quarterback question, but maybe you take a filler in the 2nd round on a Jackson Dart, right, and try to develop him that way. And I love Tyrod being there. He's under contract for another year. Tyrod Taylor could be your bridge quarterback, right? He's done it multiple times, and it's actually worked, right? Mm-hmm. It worked at the Chargers. Justin Herbert ended up taking over for him. It happened in Buffalo. Josh Allen.
He is the kind of, he's kind of the good luck Chuck.
He's that transcendent guy. Yeah. He's the guy that you want as your bridge guy to train the young guy behind you, because that young 100%. Guy is going to take off. Baker Mayfield in Cleveland. Like, he's done it multiple times. Like, this is what he does.
Didn't quite work out with Daniel Jones, but, in New York. But you can't hit them all. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Then we're actually going to dive into the top of the draft order, see where we think the top picks in this draft will go right after this.
It's a team almost too good to be true.
You guys ain't ready for us.
Kick your game day off right as the Tops team tackles all the biggest headlines around the league.
Who's got 2 thumbs and loves this next segment?
Sunday mornings on CBS Sports Network.
For our 6th point here, we're going to take a look at the top of the NFL draft as it stands right now, because, Leger, I got a mock draft dropping tomorrow on CBS Sports. And I want to give you who I got here for these top teams. We got the Raiders at number 1, Giants at number 2. They're the only 2 lost teams in the NFL. Then the Patriots, Panthers, Jaguars round out the top 5. Titans, Jets, Browns, Bengals, Bears round out the top 10. Jets obviously at number 7, looking up at the quarterback position. But the good news is New England, Carolina, Jacksonville, and probably even Tennessee, maybe not so much after this weekend, but they may not need quarterbacks or may not be desperate for quarterbacks. So it really is only the Raiders and Giants ahead of the Jets that are. So if a third mystery quarterback does emerge in this year's draft, they would be still at the top of that pecking order. But I'll let you know who I got here. I'll read my mock draft for this top 10 just real quick, and you give me your initial thoughts. I got Shedeur going 1 to the Raiders. Even though I got Cam Ward as my QB1, it's just the fit. Okay. It seems like Shedeur to get there.
I get that.
He's Instagramming pics of Allegiant Stadium saying beautiful or whatever. Like he wants to be a Raider. So I think that this fit makes sense. Cam Ward going to the Giants at 2. Travis Hunter to the Patriots at 3. Penn State DN Abdul Panthers at 4. I just think he's the best sort of D or O
So
lineman.
twitchy, man. So twitchy.
They just need anyone. So just take the best player. I got the Jags taking Will Campbell, the LSU OT at 5. Titans drafting Tetaroa McMillan, the Arizona wide receiver at 6. I got the Jets going Mason Graham, Michigan DT at 7. Browns getting Georgia defensive end Mykel Williams at 8. I got the Bears going Ashton Genty. Oh, I had the Bears at 9.
Yeah, the Bears at 9 instead of 10.
Okay, well, whatever. I got the Bears going Ashton Genty, and then I got the Bengals going Jalen Walker, the Georgia defensive end. So there's my top 10. Any thoughts on that top 10 initially here?
I don't mind it at all. After watching Carolina, though, today, I think DJ Wanham is coming along as he's been a lot healthy. And Clowney's played really well. Now, he missed a day, but he's played really well. And I know you gave them Abdul Carter, which I'm not mad at. I wouldn't mind, and tell me if this is crazy. Tetaroa McMillan at 4, I don't think that's a reach because we saw what Bryce Young has been able to do. I love Xavier Legette, but he has to catch the football. Like you can't stay on the field and continue to drop the football. Like they literally brought you to be the X out there, and you've struggled mightily the last few weeks.
His name starts with X.
Like literally, like you were supposed to be the guy, and you've let that team and Bryce Young down time after time. Right? Even today, like they had a chance to win it at the end, and he drops a touchdown pass. Like, so I don't know if you want to give up on him. Is this like a Quentin Johnson thing where like now his mental maybe is messed up? Because Quentin Johnson had the same thing, and like just like Xavier Legette, he'll flash for 2 or 3 games, but then disappear again. I don't think T-Mac is gonna have that issue. Like he's a guy that can go up and get the football. Like he thrives in pressure situations. So like I love the Carter. You know, I'm a defensive lineman, so I love the Carter pick. But I'm like, especially if Travis Hunter's gone. I mean, Tetaroa McMillan sounds enticing because I think you have to surround Bryce with more playmakers, man. Because I feel like that Carolina defense with Ejiro Evero has started to play better the last few weeks. Right now, again, they definitely need some more rush guys off the edge. I think another thing that we haven't talked about, Derek Brown being out has really hurt them as well from the interior. Right, he'll be back next year. So, like I said, DJ Wanham's starting to get healthy. I think that's back-to-back games with sacks. Jadeveon Clowney, you know, you can always bank on him to get 6 to 8 sacks, right? Maybe you go defensive end in the second round. I just think you have to surround Bryce with playmakers, especially with Adam Thielen getting up there in age.
No, I agree with the thought process. Mine in giving them Abdul Carter is that I think Carter and Hunter are the only 2 blue chip prospects, like true high end, can't miss dudes, you know, in this draft class. Everyone after him is there's some very good prospects. I put McMillan in that category, but I wouldn't put him in that tier that I put Hunter and Carter.
I get
they're
that.
just like different cats altogether. That like, you know, it's kind of like the gosh, I'm trying to think of a draft that's comparable. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but more just like when you're in that area, when you're that
draft.
bad. When you're that bad at the top of the draft, you take as good a player as you can possibly get. Is my theory. I want them to get T. Higgins in free agency. Now, everyone wants T. Higgins in free agency. You're not the only ones, but that to me would be like the perfect fit to where that would free you up then come draft time. But I do agree, Tetaroa McMillan, he won't drop balls. He has insane ball skills. That guy has amazing,
ridiculous.
Night and day from Xavier Legette. He is not dropping that game winner the way Legette did today. Oh my Lord, that was difficult. All right, there's our mock draft. Go ahead and check it out. Those are our 6 points. We're going to go for 2 here, though, to round out the show. Our parting shots. What do you got for us today, Leger?
Yeah, I kind of spoke about it a little bit, but I'll just go more into detail on it. I think the Atlanta Falcons have to take a hard look in the mirror right now because, again, when you're 6-3 and you have a 3-game lead and you allow a team to essentially walk you down, a team that has been massacred with injuries at that in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and yet Liam Cohen has still been able to get the most out of the offense, whether it's using 2 backs now because he knows he doesn't have as many playmakers on the outside. And Baker Mayfield, even though he did have those 2 interceptions today, consistently nobody's better in quick game than him getting the ball out. I think if you're Raheem Morris, you have to really figure out the temperature of your locker room, right? Because now this is a 4-game skid, and now we're a game back in the division where we had a significant lead around week 10 of the season. and now we're on the outside looking in, and our quarterback has not played well, right? Is he healthy? Is he not? Is this a mental thing for Kirk Cousins? Like, I think Greg Olsen, who does a masterful job calling games, brought up a really good point today. Like, it's one thing if you're a veteran quarterback and you've been somewhere, like you've kind of built up that camaraderie. You've built up that layer of trust where if you go through a skid, guys are like, man, he'll fight his way out of this because he's been around. We know him. We've seen it. It's a lot different when you're a free agent and you go somewhere new. You haven't really built up that rapport with that team. So, like, guys on that team, you know, that have been there, or even guys that are coming there for the first time, they just want to win right now. Now, again, this is the NFL, and everybody, I don't say everybody goes through ups and downs. They do go through ups and downs. I don't know how many people go through skids like this that Kurt is going through, especially when you've played at a high level before. And, you know, their old rumor always says, like, when it goes bad, right? So, like, you hope that's not what's happening with Kirk Cousins. But if I'm Raheem Morris, like, again, to your point, Mike, they're playing the Raiders, and I want to say you said the Giants on that schedule. Like, to me, this is a perfect time to put Michael Penix Jr. in the game, right? So he can get his confidence. You know, you can lean on that run game. We saw it today versus the Minnesota Vikings. Like, Bijan Robinson is one of the best games I've seen him play this year, right? Tyler Algier is going to be Mr. Steady Eddie. He's always going to run downhill and be physical. Like, he can lean on the run game, and he's got and Michael Penix with that lively arm that he has, now maybe you can stretch the field a little bit more when you can take shots down the field with Drake London, and you can really kill the middle of the field with Darnell Mooney, right? Kyle Pitts, again, terrible concentration drop today, but maybe you get him more involved as well. So to me, my thing is you got to really take a hard look in the mirror and consider putting Michael Penix Jr. in to essentially save your season. And I get what you're saying, Mike. Like, that's a tough place to put a rookie in. But to me, like you said, I think you're playing with house money right now because it was one thing when you were on top of the division in front. That's no longer the case, right? So most rookies that go in the first round, especially in the top 10, this is around the time they play anyway, the last 4 weeks of the season, right? So, like, again, you have to know Kirk Cousins personally, what you do. You have to know where his mental is like, right? And you also need to know what the mental of your team is like, because things can unravel fast when you're 6-3, and then all of a sudden you're out of the playoff mix. So my thing is, I would literally take a hard consideration to play Michael Penix Jr. this week versus the Raiders.
It would be one thing if Kirk was just, 31 years old on a new team and going through struggles the way he is. But he's 36, coming off an Achilles, and his arm is legitimately not the same. I think anyone who's watched more of his career can say he does not have the same arm strength he had prior to the Achilles tear. And it's like,
correct.
We've seen this over, Matt Ryan with the Colts, Philip Rivers with the Colts. You can keep naming guys with the Colts, but like the arm strength, when it goes, you are not the same quarterback. And that's the biggest thing, is that when you lose a little bit, it's difficult to adjust mentally to that lost arm strength. And you still make throws as if you have the same arm you did prior. In the NFL, it's like the margin for error is so slim that you can't have that. And you're seeing it on the football field week in and week out. So I don't think there's a rebound, at least this season. Now, maybe, a year and a half removed from an Achilles, he may gain some of that back with some strength training, the more he can do with it. Sure, you can make an argument that he could be back next year, but I don't think there's any argument to be made that he is good enough to get you through a playoff, even one playoff game this year. At that point, you might as well try. And my parting shot is just looking around the landscape of the NFL and seeing how drastic the coaching divide is. And I think that's why we're here at week 14 and seeing this massive chasm and seeing so many teams that are already out of the mix, so many teams already clinched. Basically, like the playoff odds, there's only a handful of races that are even up for grabs. And we talk about them seemingly every week, but there's not a lot of playoff spots up for grabs. And I think it's because when you look around, there's such a massive difference between the haves and have-nots of coaches. Just look at the list of playoff head coaches. I'm going to read it off right now. Andy Reid, Mike Tomlin, Jim Harbaugh, John Harbaugh, Sean Payton, DeMeco Ryan, Sean McDermott, Dan Campbell, KOC, Matt LaFleur, Todd Bowles, Nick Sirianni, Mike McDonald, Dan Quinn, with a few exceptions there. That is basically your top 13 to 15 head coaches in the NFL, sans Sean McVay and sans Kyle Shanahan. We just saw what Sean McVay could do against a team that's one of the best in the NFL, the Buffalo Bills. If he had anywhere near a healthy roster, either of those two, they are in the playoffs themselves. So I think when you look around the NFL, if you don't have a guy, if you aren't in the mix with the best among the best OCs, DCs, you don't have that guy. You just don't have a chance right now. Unfortunately, there's too many guys doing it at too high a level for you to even compete if you are not throwing out some of the best talent at head coach or coordinator in the league right now. You just can't. The coaching divide is so massive as it stands in the NFL right now, and that's why you're seeing this big playoff divide that we're seeing around the league. Yeah,
without a doubt. I think something also, just to piggyback off of that, is the issue with firing coaches and then the person that you make the interim coach is such a big thing, right? Because we've seen where guys like Antonio Pierce, who wasn't the defensive coordinator, right, was a linebacker coach, which makes more sense to put him in charge. That way, Patrick Graham can just focus on the defense. Now, again, I hate that guys get judged once they are given the interim title, because you're thrown into a mess, essentially. Like we saw Thomas Brown today, right? The offense had finally started looking good for the Chicago Bears the last 2 weeks. It looked abysmal the first half of Sanford. They had 4 yards going into halftime. And that's because when you throw the running back coach into the offensive coordinator position, it takes about a week or two to get acclimated, and then everything starts flowing. Now you're elevating him to the interim coach. So not only does he have to leave from upstairs in the box, he has to come back down on field level, still call the plays, but still he has the responsibility of the whole team. So, like, you don't think the offense is going to struggle because of that? We saw it with the Jets. Jeff Ulbrich was their best coach on staff, and they made him the interim coach because he does have aspirations to be a head coach. We saw him take over as head coach for the Senior Bowl just a year ago, and he did a masterful job there. But when you do that in the middle of a season and the guy hasn't been able to prep himself to get ready to be a head coach, like, you take away what he does really great, and now that offense or defense struggles because of it. We see it now with the Jets. Their defense was a championship-type defense. Now it's like a wet tissue paper. Like, people are tearing through it left and right because now he has more responsibility on him. He can't just lock in to the defensive side, right? So, like, I find it always interesting when you see guys like a Dan Campbell who wasn't an offensive defensive coordinator, right? But the team is able to turn it around when he becomes an interim coach. You see an Antonio Pierce who's a linebacker coach, but he becomes the head coach, and he can still coach his linebackers because it's one facet of the defense. It's not the total defense, and yet still be head coach. But when you try to take a coordinator and make him a head coach, it usually never works in season because of all the added responsibility they have to do. It takes away from doing what they're really good at, which is on the offense or the defensive side of the ball. So I think that's part of the issue when we look at a lot of these coaches too, because we've already seen a few firings and interim guys come in and they haven't had the success because of that. Now, I think Rizzi, if I'm not mistaken, is a special teams coach, right?
Yes, he was.
So, yeah, and we've seen John Harbaugh do that. So, like, again, not to say that special teams isn't important, but it's a lot different when, you know, you're only up every 3 or 4 plays, depending on a punt return, kickoff return, compared to being up every single play as a coordinator on offense or defense. So, and that's why I think the Saints have actually had some success, right? Because he isn't calling the offense or defensive plays.
Exactly. All right, there you have it. There's our show for today. We'll be back on Tuesday with Pete Prisco and Kyle Long talking about Pete's power rankings. Until then, keep pushing.